You know, when you live and work in a van, be it in the city or off-grid, you do need electric. And this is how I manage. Hello everyone, Stefan here with Bohemian Tales. Welcome back to the channel. It's always good to have you here. If you are new to the channel, I travel with my self-built camper van and I also work in it. And on today's topic, I'm going to be talking about the power supply that I have in the van. I'm going to break it up in three categories. First one would be how I capture the power supply or the energy, whatever you want to call it. Second would be how I store that energy. And third would be what do I have in there that needs all powered up, like everything that needs to be plugged in. All that stuff is coming up, and let's just dive in. So how do I capture all this power to be able to stay off grid for 4 or 5 days? So I have two ways of doing it. One is by driving, and the alternator will charge up the battery, and two is with solar panels. I have 400 watts of solar up there. It's 4 100-watt energy solar panels. That's a mouthful. So what do I use to manage all this up? Like, I need some sort of charge controller to be able to transform energy from solar or alternator to usable energy in my van. And for that I have a charge controller from Renogy as well. It's a 50 amp DC to DC MPPT charge controller. What does all of that mean? Well, in short, it means that it can manage everything. So a few things that it does is basically take power from the alternator when needed, sends it back to the house battery. If it's not needed, it just takes power from the solar on top of the roof. It also does something really cool where it actually reverses electricity back to the car battery whenever the house battery is full, as long as I'm in the sun. Again, it does all of this in the background. It also works with AGM, lithium, lead acid, all that stuff, all the big major types of batteries. I think it's like 4 different kinds. For the battery itself, the house battery, I only have one, and it's a 100 amp power Battleborn LiPo 4 battery. What it actually means in short is that this battery is lithium and obviously has 100 amp powers, but what's nice about it is that it has like a chip in it, or a brain, let's say, and it actually does protect itself from overheating or getting super cold, and it just kind of shuts off and then gets back on whenever temperatures are prime for the battery. So that's really nice. And it also has something like 5,000 cycles, which is great. Before we dive into all the stuff that I have in the van that needs to get powered, I want to make a note that I intentionally got everything to run on 12 volt. I have very few things that need to be plugged into a inverter, which I will talk about last because I just don't use it very often. But most of the stuff, including the fridge, is 12 volt. All right, let's run through it. I have a 54 quart 12 volt fridge. It's from Costway. And this fridge works really well. The battery can handle it, it never turns off. It does have one of those low battery kill off switches, so it doesn't drain the battery completely. It has never happened. It used to happen with my Goal Zero setup that I used to have. All right, touching on that, if you guys want me to make a video of what I think about the Goal Zero power banks and the setup that I have, let me know in the comments below, and then I'll gladly make a video about that. Getting back to the topic, I have a Sony camera which I'm filming on right now, and this camera has 2 batteries, 1 laptop, 2 phones, 1 iPad, 1 AirPods, 1 outdoor Bluetooth speaker, 1 wireless mouse which I use to edit videos with, 1 interior small fan, 1 small roof vent, 1 MaxxAir roof vent, 1 diesel heater. So yes, dry air diesel heaters actually do need power source to be able to run, because it has a pump in there that needs to work to be able to pump in the diesel. So it's not only diesel and no need for power, and it also has like a LCD screen which also needs to be powered. That's kind of the brain of the whole operation there. If you were thinking to get yourself a heater and you don't have the power management that I'm talking about right now, then there are options with the Mr. Buddy heaters or the Olympia, which those actually just have like an igniter and you just put the propane in there and they work. Do a little bit of research on that because they do produce moisture, so that's why a dry air heater is the option that I went for in my van. 1 backup camera, yes, that also needs power, and I do not hook that up to my car battery. I've had that kill my car battery twice because it does record, and it does record all the time. It has a front facing dash camera and then the backup camera, and then it records forever, so it's always on. The actual mirror doesn't stay on, but it does record and it does work, so that needs to be powered by a bigger battery supply. 2 puck lights which are USB chargeable, 1 interior string light, 1 exterior string light, a couple of portable batteries, a flashlight, 2 Ryobi batteries, and Ryobi is a brand that does tools and stuff like that, so I always have those with me. And it also powers my car vacuum cleaner, which I kind of use pretty often. 1 jump starter battery bank, which I have used in the past. I have a video on that when my car battery died somewhere in the wild, and I just was able to jump start my own battery. So that's really something essential for me to have, because I do go in national forest and different free lands where there's no cell service. So even if I were to have a AAA person come up and jump the car, it's not really guaranteed, because if I don't have a cell signal I can't reach anybody. And also some of the people from AAA don't necessarily want to go off-road a lot of the times. You know, they probably don't have the vehicle to do so. They might have just a car, not a tow truck. And you also notice that I have a lot of different plugs and wires, because all of this stuff, it gets charged by literally like different plugs. Like the iPhones and the iPad, they do have the same plugs, but then the laptop has a different type. And then I have the USB-C, then I have the mini USB. I have a few type of charging wires, but for the most part I just have the USB plug basically, and the 12-volt plugs, and that's pretty much my setup for the plugs in the walls. And because I don't have the Gold Zero battery, I was able to like run wires to different spots in the van, so it's not only in one place basically, even though it kind of is in one place. So what are the things that I actually use the inverter for? So I have a 500 watt inverter. The reason I didn't get a bigger one is because I actually calculated everything that I would need, and that would be if I were to actually run everything at the same time. And 500 watt for me is more than enough. I almost never really actually use the inverter, and when it does get used, getting a bigger inverter would also like drain the battery faster, because itself takes power to actually run. And then let's go through what it powers. The answer may actually surprise you. I don't have that many things. Like I said, I have only the batteries for the Ryobi, that those actually do need to be powered with 110. I have the laptop, which is essentially I could plug it into 12 volt, but it would take forever, so I do plug that in. So I could charge the camera batteries with just plugging in the camera and having one of the batteries in the camera, or I have a charger that needs to go into the inverter as well, because it has the house plug and it's 110, and it does charge faster, so I choose to do that. Plus when I'm filming, I kind of actually need to use the camera, so I can't have it plug in. So what I do is I start with 2 fresh batteries, and as soon as one dies, I'll switch it over and then have the other one charging basically. And when I'm done and going back or driving back somewhere or just be done, then I'll plug in the camera in the 12 volt without starting the inverter. I hope all of that made sense. That's pretty much everything that I would need an inverter for. Everything else is 12 volt, including that fridge, which is a very important one, that's why I keep on mentioning it, and the diesel heater, that's a 12 volt as well. And the other stuff is just really small things. Now, as a bonus, I'm just gonna talk a little bit of what I would be doing differently if I were to do it again. I would probably not get as many solar panels on top of the van. I would stick to maybe 2, at the most 3. And the reason behind that is that solar is not very efficient. So to get the most power out of the solar panels on the roof, I would have to have like sun beat right on top of them for a long time, for a few hours, which really never happens. As soon as like the sun goes a different direction and then it does beat on them, but not directly on them, they are not as efficient. They just start, you know, decreasing the input power that they get. And what I would do differently with that is, yeah, I would put the 200 solar panels on there, but that is it. Maybe the 300, depends on how much room I would need on the roof. That's the other thing. Having 400 watts of solar on the roof, I don't have any more space for anything else, like extra storage or anything like that. It's just the panels, the roof vents, and that's pretty much it. So if I were to have the 200 watt solar panels on the roof, I would have plenty of space for like a additional storage box, or, you know, just racks that I can put more stuff up there. Instead, have maybe 200 watts of portable solar panels, which I can actually move around after the sun. I would be chasing the sun the whole day, but at least they would be efficient. I would actually get the most out of solar panels. And with that, because it would be a wire and I would have a longer wire, would mean that my van does not have to sit in the sun the whole time, which results to being 100 degrees plus in there. If I keep it in the sun, I would be able to have it somewhere in the shade and just move the solar panels in the sun. In my book, that's the best of both worlds. Because the solar panels are very inefficient, my main power supply is the alternator. You know, with the lifestyle that I have, if I'm in the city, the solar panels on the roof, they really don't matter. You know, I always drive around for an hour or so, you know, to do errands and stuff like that, and that's enough for the alternator to be able to power my 100 amp battery. If I were to be off grid, obviously you don't want to run your car, and the solar panels are needed, and that's the way I would go by that. I would get solar panels that you can move, you know, on the ground. They have those solar panels with stands. There's plenty of companies that do those nowadays. Thanks for coming along on today's video. If you want to watch more van life related content, you can check out this video up here. Otherwise, don't forget to hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of the videos that I put out about van life. And I will see you in the next one.